Happy October 30th, everybody. Belinda and I were just talking about the minor flood in my basement. And it's actually really good because it's like, oh, what's the next level of declutter that can happen? I cleaned out one of my desk drawers in my office. That was my big declutter on Sunday. And we did a bunch of other things. I've got a couple blankets that can go to a friend of mine who takes blankets to the homeless and things like that. And so it's like this other level of decluttering and cleaning that's happening because it's like, oh, there's a lot of stuff we had to move. And then the stuff that really matters isn't going to go back where it was because it's highly likely that might happen again. It happened about 12 years ago and I did it.
That's so true. Like you get to that stuff and you're like, do I need it? Do I need to find a better place for it?
Yeah. So yeah, that process is going on in my house, which has taken more time, which, like I mentioned in the chat, I apologize, your email did not go out. And I realized that this morning. I went, oh no. So you'll get your email today. So this week is early to bed is the habit. And I'm like, even in the title, early to bed, I'm like, oh, I wonder how that just triggers people, right? You're like, oh, I don't want to go to bed early. So we want to talk about rest and sleep. And it's so funny when my creative brain kicks in, was like at 10 o'clock last night. And so I have a couple of resources, and this resource, The Power of Rest by Karen Brody, I only read like 30 pages into it so far, and I've had it for a while. I kind of read 30 pages into it and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this. And I've been doing yoga nidras for more than a year, almost daily. And they make a huge difference. And now I'm like, oh, next level. Because that was the thing that I was thinking about this morning of, where are we with our tiredness? Where are we with our sleep? And what's our next level? Right? For me, I'm really tired. And it's like, wow, going to New Brunswick and going flat out for a week really messed with I feel like it messed with my Ojas level, which is my deep-seated energy, not so much. And so there's this different level of, oh, I'm tired, but I was awake at 5:30 this morning. So I'm like, I like to be awake at 5:30. So it's like, okay, how do I bring myself back up to or beyond the level I was at before? So I kind of wanted to touch base on that or just plant that seed. And Kate talks about, like, this is where I am. How many resources do I have on sleep? In Kate's book, she talks about early to bed and actually allowing your body to wind down. So if you remember, for those of you that have kids or those of you that don't have kids are going to know kids, since kids are like infants, we do a bedtime routine that winds them down, right? We put their jammies on, we play with them, maybe we give them a bath first, and then we read them a story and whatever that is. And so it's like, as adults, now we're just like, oh, okay, go to bed. And so there's no mental or physical wind down, not usually. And then we go to bed kind of jacked up with our body kind of like this, based on whatever caffeine products we might have put in it or whatever adrenaline rush we might be on. And then if you add in there the second wind, right? If I don't start winding down for bed at 8 o'clock, I get a second wind that keeps me up past 10 and then I can't go to sleep. And that sucks because I'm tired. So there's a lot of factors and there's a lot of complexity, but not to the sleep thing. So Kate really talks about how do we wind our body down and what do we do in the evening? Are we like marking papers or cleaning house or doing all of these things that give us this adrenaline rush that keeps us going? I know lots of people are like, oh, after my kids go to bed at 9 o'clock, then I can have time to myself. And then it's like, then they do stuff, ramp themselves up, and then they can't sleep. So that's my rant on sleep or lack thereof. And I know, Belinda, you talked about rest as being one of your goals. I think Shelley talked about rest as being one of her goals. And now I can't remember. I think rest was a common theme for all of us. So then my question becomes, what's it worth to you? just try to decide where I want to go next. I want to read a little excerpt out of this book. And it's the reason why this lady really resonated with me, because she talked about, let me find what I wanted to read. She talked about that she's just fine, right? I'm just fine. And we've heard the jokes about what just fine means. She writes, how about you? Are you just fine? If you're a woman in today's high-paced modern world, there's a good chance you feel like I did all those years ago. Maybe like me, you've been listening to the conventional wisdom for a long time. All mothers are tired. All women who work are crazy busy. Being tired all the time is normal. And so that for me is like, that kind of hooked me in, because I'm like, no, maybe like me, you tell yourself that others that you're fine, not realizing that fine is a code for my life is not going well. It's easy to think worn out is normal because the worn out woman model is the dominant model for women in our culture. Have you noticed that our culture loves women achievers, even if they're exhausted every step of the way to the top? And then she writes some more. But the other thing, and there's a piece that I can't find, that I couldn't find this morning, that's just like, I don't actually want to be that model of how exhausted can we be, right? If I think of my children and my daughter, and she's my biggest motivator, so it's like, I don't want her to think she has to give her life away and go mock chicken to be, successful or loved or whatever. So I want her to learn to create boundaries, healthy boundaries that actually take care of her first, and then whatever comes next, which we don't ever teach, like not even in our school system. We don't teach that at all. It's like curriculum first, get those assignments done. I don't care that you're exhausted. I don't care that you have a job, or I care, but there's nothing I can do about it. So, yeah. So she also writes this: the world needs you and what you have to offer, but it needs the fully alive, well-rested, not exhausted you. Imagine a world where women make rest and rhythm a priority and operate more from their full power. And so, like, I just think if all the women I know were fully rested and fully in their power, like how profound our world would be. And you can take it in the direction of, oh, men want us tired, but I don't know that's I'm not even interested in going in that direction. It's just like, we get to choose, because we get to empower ourselves, and we are ultimately responsible or in charge of our choices. Any thoughts after my sleep rants, Belinda?
I think that's so true. First of all, that book sounds amazing. And when you said how many resources I have, I think it's interesting. I haven't looked at a sleep or a rest book since I had a baby. And the books were about how to get my child to sleep. They weren't about how I sleep. They were about how to get my child into good sleep habits, right? And I just thought, well, that's interesting, because I really haven't explored that option, because I'm a reader. What I don't know, I either Google or I read about, right? But I haven't ever thought to go get myself a book on, as an adult, how to sleep better, which is interesting, because that just seems very natural. That just seems like something I should have thought of. But I do have bedtime routines. Like, that is something I do have. It's just then I tend to ignore when I'm supposed to go to bed. So I do the routine, and then I'm like, no, I don't want to. So I wash my face, and I set my bed up. I pull the blankets back. It's all ready for me just to jump into at bedtime. And then I prolong it, which is just dumb, because I really like my bed.
So it's really funny what I'm hearing you say, like, and this is what pops into mind. It's like, okay, you're going to make a cake, and you're going to put all the ingredients in, and you're going to mix it, and then you're going to leave it on the counter.
Yep. I'm not baking it.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, because we often are more likely to do something for somebody else, right? You said for our kids, right? For my kids, I want a sleep routine, because then they'll sleep and then I can sleep.
Yeah.
But then you don't necessarily follow that sleep routine. So it's like, I just want people to be aware of and not be too critical on yourselves. It's like, where are you doing things for your kids, which is great, but you're not doing them for yourself, right?
Yeah.
You're making your kid make sure you're, packing healthiest lunches for your kid, but maybe not for yourself, or you're giving your kid some downtime, but maybe not for yourself. Because we do. It's just like, it's normalized in the world, right? I'm going to use a hockey mom, and I never was a hockey mom because I'm like, not on your life. It's just like, if you have 4 kids and they're all in hockey, you're running around for all this hockey stuff. And then there's this expectation, oh, you're a hockey mom, you just run around and do all these hockey things for your kids. It's just like, yeah, but what about you as a human being? And how much more functional and how much better would your life be, as well as your children's life, if you were able to say, actually, not this weekend. Like, this is one weekend that. And so we've talked about this. We've talked about planning. It's like, how do you plan it? How do you lay it out and foresee it so you know what's ahead? Right? In this modern day, it's like, we look at the weather and we know what's going on 2 weeks out.
Mhm.
Probably more than we know what's going on in our life 2 weeks out sometimes. And so it's like, there's so much. And like you said, it's just like, oh, I never even thought that, even though I'm exhausted and I've been exhausted for a while, and that's a little bit of a norm in a teacher's life, what am I doing to become unexhausted?
Yeah, there's, you know what, I mean, as a teacher, when I was teaching, it was, I read, I don't know how many dozens, and I mean, like, over my career, maybe 100 of books on professional development, on how to be a better teacher, right? That just seemed commonplace. That just seemed like that's what you do. But on how to be more rested and sleep better, like, now that you say it, it just seems ridiculous that I didn't. Do you know what I mean? Like, I spent so much time perfecting and getting better at my craft as a teacher, and yet totally ignored the idea that, I mean, yeah, exhausted. Like, how cheapers, you come to December and there ain't no tired like December tired or June. But I never even thought to make that part of my professional or personal development, because I, it's just such a perpetual state. And something else you said too about the weather, about knowing what's happening 2 weeks out in the weather better than knowing what's happening 2 weeks out in our lives, let alone what's happening immediately in our lives, or checking in with our bodies to be like, oh, it's fine, everything's fine, I'm fine. And then not even taking a moment to be like, but am I really, am I okay?
Well, and I think, like, that's for me, and that's where teachers first came from, was that's where I was fine. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh shit, I'm actually no longer fine. And
Yeah.
not am I just fine, I'm done and I need a year to recover or more. And so it's like, and that's, it's not common practice, it's not common knowledge, it's just like, oh, if I was tired, and I wrote down some questions, and I don't know that we're going to have time to look at them today, but it's just like, what are you too tired to do? Right? It's just like, for me, sometimes it's parent my children, mark papers, right? Clean my house, clean my shower, vacuum my floor, go for a walk outside, do
Mm-hmm.
15 minutes of exercise, phone a friend and visit. And when we look at these things that we're too tired to do, they would lift us up. But because we're too tired to do them, they don't happen. So yeah, it's an interesting conversation. And I really like what you said about, oh, I had read hundreds of books on professional development to be a better teacher, but I didn't know if I just got better sleep or more sleep, I'd be a better teacher. So yeah, powerful. So I'm gonna put that question back to you, Belinda. It's like, what are you too tired to do?
A lot of the things you mentioned. My workout time is sacred, so even when I'm tired, I do that, and it does lift me up. It sets my day. But spending that even sending the text, it's not even just the phone call, it's the text saying, hey, how's it going? Because there are moments in my head where I'm like, I don't want to engage in that conversation right now because I don't have the energy for it. And it's just a text. Do I have to do anything or go anywhere? No, I can sit on the comfort of my couch and just send them, but I don't do it because I'm like, I don't have it within me right now to have like even a 10-minute text conversation. So I don't.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I was going to say, and we talked about this on one of the other calls, was reading. It's easier and less brain power for me to passively sit and watch TV or scroll through social media than to actually engage in a book, which I know I'm going to love because I love to read. And I'm like, yeah, I feel like I don't want to start something I can't finish because I'm tired.
Well, what I'm hearing you say too is the things that I want to do, but I'm too tired to do, I'm not doing, but I'm doing other things that don't give my brain a rest. That seemingly, like, it's really interesting to pay attention to the disengage, right? I can disengage and watch a movie and eat some popcorn and really enjoy it. Or I can shut myself off and know that if I watch a movie and eat popcorn, I won't have to take anything else in per se and do anything like with it, like you said. And so I have to be careful because sometimes it's just like I'm shutting off and this is where I'm going. Same thing with books for me. It's just like, am I taking some downtime and really enjoying what am I doing, or am I shutting everything off? And there's a distinct difference in feeling when I do that. So it's an awareness. And then the other thing you mentioned is there's this idea we hold space. We hold space in our house, with our children, with our friends, in a classroom, with our family. And so it's just like some days we just don't have capacity to do it. And then everything kind of goes south. When we don't have good capacity to do it, it's just like our kids kind of argue, or we get into places where we could just let them figure it out, or, argue with our partner because what they've said has annoyed us because we're tired, rather than allowing ourselves that extra sleep. And I think you and I have talked about this before, it's just like when we're in a classroom, are we drawn into the drama of everything and sucked into it, and our energy is totally sucked into it? Or do we sit back and are we the director and go, we can just do something over here and do something over here and do something over here. And there's like this separation that happens because we have the capacity to do it, that we're not sucked into all the energy. Oh, jeepers.
Did you spill your water?
My water.
Oh no. The flood, the water,
1 second.
Yeah, no worries.
Fortunately, all the towels got washed from the water catastrophe. What is it with water in me? Holy cow. And I think too, some of the stuff that I've read, just have a thing that my computer sits on that's now wet. The other thing that is interesting and fascinating about sleep, which me spilling my water made me think of it, is our functionality. Right? Don't operate heavy machinery when you have, this stuff in your system, but don't operate heavy machinery or drive. So, yeah. So the other thing I wanted to present today is, what would you do if you had more energy, drive, and inspiration?
Pet projects. I would spend more time on photography, and I would spend more time loading them up because I have a Shutterstock account and I have a Getty Images account that I've loaded photos up onto, and they have a few dollars sitting in them, not enough to get paid out yet, but they are time consuming to set up. They are very time consuming to set up. Like, you have to put each picture in and you have to give it a description and keyword searches. So if somebody goes looking for it on the interweb, that you hope it pops up, right? I have thousands of photos that I could load up on those websites. And right now I have hundreds of photos on those websites. Like if I had more oomph, again, is it a super difficult task? No, it's time consuming and you got to have a little brain power in it because you have to choose the right keywords and things like that. But it would, in the long run, it might benefit me because it would be another revenue stream. And then I'd get to share more of my photos, right? Like more of my photos with the public. Because but right now it's perpetually on my list of things to do. And it never comes off my list of things to do because I just never seem to have the time or the energy for it.
Cool. So it's like, yeah. So what I'm hearing you say is you have a potential income source that is something that you absolutely love to do, go out and take photos, and you want to download some more and you're not doing it.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think that's reality too, right? Totally. If I had more energy and drive, if I look at the business side of things, I'd be reaching out to people for to do podcasts and have finished the other 6 convention forms I need to fill out and things like that. But it's just like, I don't have the drive or the energy to do it. And I would say for the most part, I get pretty good sleep. But like I said earlier, my sleep got kind of knocked off kilter. So, excuse me. The power of rest. It's huge. And we've only been talking for like 25 minutes about the power of rest in yours and my life. And I know if there was more people in this conversation, it would be similar conversation.
Yeah.
So this is the part 2 where it's just like, who chooses? I choose, you choose. And what do you want to choose? Which is kind of why I wanted to talk, why I asked those questions is what are you too tired to do? And what would you do if you had the energy to do it? Where it's just like, how do you dive into that why? How do you dive into the deeper why of why you go to bed early? Is it because you want to follow through on what you love to do? I wrote walk outside. Like, right, I would love to walk outside more often, but I'm just like, oh, I'm too tired to do that. That takes up too much energy. And that's just one thing I wrote down. There's probably 15 more, if not 50 more. So later on our call tonight, or not tonight, sorry, wrong day, Wednesday, we're going to dive more into the power of rest, because I think I'm changing it to the power of rest, because it's not necessarily about early to bed, and early to bed can trigger people. And we've talked about that before. It's like, oh, so how can we shift the language so we understand how powerful sleep is? Yeah. Anything else you want to share, Belinda?
So I had said that I was going to start this week going to bed like 10 minutes earlier. But then I thought, well, I don't really have a baseline. I don't have a bedtime where I'm like, because I'll fall asleep on the couch and drag my sorry butt off the couch sometimes at midnight, and I've already been asleep for an hour and a half and then go to bed. In my head, that very much feels like I'm going to bed at midnight, even though I've already gotten an hour and a half worth of sleep. So sometimes I think it's a bit of a mind game that I'm doing to myself. Like I'm asleep on the couch at 10:30, going to bed at midnight. So then I feel like I'm shortchanging myself, right? So I'm like, okay, so then I have to establish a bedtime. So I think saying I'm going to go to bed 10 minutes earlier was okay, but it wasn't actually realistic. I think setting a bedtime and being consistent with it this week is more of the goal, as opposed to trying to make something that doesn't exist 10 minutes earlier. She's like, right? So it was I put the cart before the horse in this particular case. So I'm like, okay, 10:30 is the goal, and we'll see where we go from there. I slept awful last night. I slept terribly. And I don't know if it was again in my own head being like, well, am I getting better sleep? Am I sleeping well? Am I in a deep, I think it was almost like had the reverse effect, because then I was so consciously aware that I had gone to bed earlier that it was like I sabotaged myself almost. I don't know how else to explain it. It's so this week is going to be interesting as to whether or not there's tonight's better or the same, or right. But yeah, 10:30 is the goal, because I think I needed a baseline before I could start going 10 minutes back.
Yeah, no, totally. And that's really great awareness of, yeah, this is the goal I set, but I'm like, oh, I actually don't have a bedtime. So that's like, doesn't even work.
Yeah.
And Wednesday too, we'll talk about this, like, what are the things you do between 6 and 10:30? Just like having that conversation too of, there is that wind down routine that you said you've got, you brush your teeth, you wash your face and that kind of stuff, which is great. But it's just like, do you do anything for your mind to wind down? Or do you do anything for your body to wind down? Like 5 minutes of stretches makes or breaks my sleep. Like, I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. And I've known this for a long time and it's really in my face right now. It's like, if I don't stretch or do ball rolling, my body is like, it's just like not going to sleep. I can't get comfortable. I'm antsy. Sometimes I get anxious. And so it's just like, if I don't do those 5 to 10 minutes of stretches and it's like crawl on the floor in the living room on the carpet and do a few yoga stretches or roll my ball or whatever, my sleep is terrible. So it's really just becoming aware of it and going, oh, so do I want to sleep well? Or do I just want to hop in bed and read my book and ignore the fact that I'd like to do 5 minutes of stretches and put oil on my hands and feet? That's the other thing. So,
and I think I need to take that time that I need to incorporate into my bedtime routine as well, that mental wind down time, because I'm not granting it to myself. Reading a book, love to read it. It's relaxing. It's entertaining, but not draining, right? And so I think even for 10 minutes, just to have that 10-minute silent, quiet reading time at bedtime would be okay for me.
Well, and I wonder too, if your body's like, oh, if I get off the couch now, I can go read my book for 10 minutes. Like, I wonder if there's that part too, where it's just like, oh, yeah, I do that sometimes too. It's like, oh, I actually don't want to, I'd rather be reading my book. So I'm going to put my phone away and go get ready and read my book.
Yeah.
So, yeah, cool. Takeaways from today.
That I need to invest in some resources. Like I've been doing lots of personal development and lots of reading and things like that, but they're more centered around developing my understanding of the business. And now I need to do some more reading for me and looking at sleep. So like I said, what I don't know, I Google. I need to go find some resources for, okay, what am I doing? Like, why is it that I'm not going to bed at a decent hour? And thinking about what it is I have to gain. So that was something I need to invest a little bit more time and energy into, reading up on what I don't know.
Yeah. And this book, Dare to Rest by Karen Brody. Like I said, I only read the first 30 pages. She has a 40-day program that she walks through for women in here. That again, I don't even know what her 40-day program is, because I got to page like 30 and stopped reading because I'm like, cool, this is all I want right now. And now
Karen Brody, you said?
Karen Brody, yeah.
Okay.
And I'm going to make the assumption that she'll have a website. She probably even has like blogs and things like that. So if you're not ready to read the book, I'm also going to drop in the group some of Kate's resources about sleep. Yeah. So I think it's interesting for me because I'm more interested in being mentored by someone who's like well rested and kind of like gets the importance of taking care of your body. That's one of my challenges these days. It's like, I don't want to be mentored by someone who's not taking care of their body.
Yeah, proof is in the pudding. You want somebody who's doing what they want you to do, right? Or what they're recommending you to do.
And I can't build my business and sell my book if I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
Right. That's the hard reality of my life, right? Because we know our life is complex. Okay, well, awesome. Thanks for your time today, Belinda. It was awesome to chat about how rested, unrested, and all of the different things that show up.
Yeah. And I will see you on Wednesday.
Sounds